Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Back of the Pack podcast. I am your host, Kyle Walker. My pleasure to be with you as always. First off, a huge thank you to our guest last week, Dave Borchard from the Kansas City Sports Commission and the race director for the Garmin Kansas City Marathon. I really hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I know I really did. It was so much fun just talking to Dave. I think he and I could just sit around and talk about running and sports for hours. Recorded or unrecorded, we could just talk this stuff for hours. And I think those are the best. Like, there was not prepared interview questions or notes. We just talked running and talked marathons. And I thought it was great. So if you haven't had a chance to go check that out, please do go give it a listen, see what you think. Hopefully you enjoy. So this week, there were no races for me this week. I am actually just back from vacation. I went on vacation. I was gone out of the country for 6 days for my first international trip. And so we had already recorded with Dave, and I was able to put that out while I was out of town. Actually, my producer put that out while I was out of town. And so we didn't miss a week of programming, but I definitely was not in town last weekend for any of the races. That does not break my heart because it is crazy hot right now. And everything in the extended forecast here in the great state of Kansas shows that we are not getting a break from this heat anytime soon. So everyone who's out there training, and I know all the training programs are in full gear right now, y'all please be careful, respect the heat, and do not hurt yourselves. Do not overheat yourselves. Let's all be really careful. Now, I am now 10 weeks away from the Berlin Marathon. In typical runner fashion, also in typical Kyle fashion, I have already firmly placed myself behind the 8 ball. My training has been very little to non-existent, especially while I was out of town. I probably could have taken some running shoes, probably could have logged some miles, but it was vacation and I didn't. So now I have 10 weeks to cram as many miles into this training season as I can before heading off to Berlin. So I'd say woe is me, but honestly, I don't deserve sympathy. I'm the idiot doing this to myself, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. But hey, the fall marathons are coming. It may be 100 degrees outside right now, but the fall marathons are almost here, as frightening as that is. So anyway, let's jump into today. Today, we are doing one of my most favoritist things. And that is an episode requested by a listener. I have been asked not once, but twice by 2 different people to cover the topic I'm going to cover today. It actually makes a lot of sense that I cover this today because today is a big anniversary for me personally. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying, when we started this podcast, I do this because I've been doing running for over 12 years. I feel I've learned a lot and I have a lot of experiences. And so I like to impart my experience and wee little bit of knowledge to those who maybe haven't been running as long or maybe haven't done a race that I'm talking about, or, I'm just trying to spread the wealth, get people excited about running, because if you want to get excited about something, talk to someone who's already excited about it. And that gets you more excited, right? So I don't want to do this. And really, I'm already getting ticked off of myself. I don't want to have a quote unquote me episode where all I do is talk about myself. That's not something I've ever wanted to do. I can relay my experiences, but I don't like, especially talking about myself. But this topic has been requested a couple times now. And so we're going to cover it because today is an anniversary for me. It is 6 years since I had open heart surgery. So I'm going to share my story about open heart surgery and kind of how it relates to running and athletics and life and things of that nature. People tell me that my story is inspirational. Okay, cool. I hope that it is. I hope you listen to this and you take away some kind of good feeling about it, because clearly I'm okay. I came through the other side of that surgery, in case you were wondering, 6 years ago, and now I'm talking to you now. But this is where I'm at. So, okay, we're gonna rewind back to the year 2016. I am doing a lot of running. I went through the full spring running calendar, Rock the Parkway. Let's see, maybe the Garmin Land Boss half marathon was there, running with the cows, some 5K, some 10Ks, this, that, and the other. We are in the month of May 2016, and I do the Corporate Challenge Half Marathon. Now, I had done the race in 2015 and it kicked my rump. I wanted a little bit of revenge in 2016. So I did that race. I think I was in a little bit better shape. It is a very difficult course. If you are someone who has ever done the Corporate Challenge Half Marathon, I think they managed to find every hill in Overland Park and make sure you run it. So I did that race. I did it better than I expected, not by a lot, but by a little. I got under the time that I wanted to get under. And so after the conclusion of that half marathon, I take my typical week off, a week to 10 days. When I go back out after that 10 days off, I start running. And again, I just done a half marathon, 13.1 miles. I go out for my first run returning and I get half a mile and I start suffering chest pains. Not chest pains like a heart attack chest pains. It wasn't that, but I was uncomfortable and I couldn't breathe very well and just couldn't find my rhythm at all. Like, wait, okay, something wasn't wrong. I thought I was just pushing myself back too quick from the half marathon. So I pack it in for the day, say, you know what, this just isn't my day. I'll try it again tomorrow. So I got the next day, same problem, half a mile. I don't feel right. My chest hurts. It's like, okay, I guess I'm going to go ahead and call a doctor. So I call my cardiologist. Now, I had already at that point a pre-existing heart condition. When I was 20 years old, so way back when, I found out that I had a defective valve in my heart. I had an aortic bicuspid, and there was what's called stenosis. So the real quick and dirty about that, because I'm no doctor, your aortic valve in your heart, it has 3 leaflets in it. Those open and close, sending out oxygenated blood. Okay, so 3 leaflets. It looks like a Mercedes symbol. And each leaflet of the Mercedes symbol opens up and sends out oxygenated blood into your body. I did not have a Mercedes symbol. I basically just had this little slit of an opening from the top of the valve to the bottom of the valve. There wasn't 3 leaflets. There were just 2 halves. And so oxygenated blood would try and go through those halves, and a lot of it wouldn't go through, and it wasn't working at 100%, but they really only could tell by hearing a heart murmur. And again, this is when I was 20. And the doctor told me when I was 20, they're like, hey, by the time you're 50, you're probably going to need an artificial valve. But for now, do your thing, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I go on with life thinking, okay, at 50 years old, I'll need open heart surgery. Don't care. Whoopee. That's a long time from now. Fast forward to 2016, and I'm having chest pains trying to run half a mile. I call my cardiologist and I go back into the office, and he takes a listen, and we do some tests and we do some scans, and he's like, that valve is toast. To the point that valve would barely open up anymore and send out the oxygenated blood. That's bad. It had completely broken down. I then had to go talk to the heart surgeon because it was time for an artificial valve. Now, when you get an artificial valve, you have options. You can have a valve out of a corpse, really. And I'm not trying to be morbid, but an organ donation. They could try and get a valve from an organ donation, and you can have another, human valve kind of a thing. You could have it out of a bovine, a cow. I think pig was also available. So you could have one out of an animal, or you could have a mechanical valve. And again, they say mechanical. I don't think it's actually made out of metal, some kind of plastic or some kind of composite, either which way. Well, my biggest question was, how do I keep running? How do I keep playing softball? How do I keep staying active? How do I continue to play sports? At that point, I was 36. I was not ready for retirement. I was not ready to hang up the cleats or the running shoes or anything else I was doing. Even if that means, running around with my kids or playing soccer with my daughter, or playing softball with my oldest, or volleyball, or whatever she was into in 2016. I don't quite recall. Well, that means we have to go with the mechanical valve. So the surgeon and I decide we're going to do the mechanical valve. That means I'll have a lifetime of being on blood thinners, because you don't want that mechanical valve to work too hard, pumping blood that's too thick through it, because that's not good for it. Like, okay, I can make the concession that I will be on blood thinners for the rest of my life, but I can continue to be active. So that's what we went with. So after all the testing was done and we decided, surgery had to happen, they were able to get me in, and they were able to get me in for surgery on July 20th, 2016. As I sit here and record this right now for you, it is July 20th, 2022. So this is my 6-year anniversary. So we go in. It is time for surgery. And there's a picture out there that my mother took after the surgery where, I'm hooked up to tons of different monitors and intubated and everything. It's terrible. But of course, I don't remember it. I was out. Thank goodness. So I wake up. The surgery is done. I'm in the ICU. I stay in the ICU for 5 days. That was not a pleasurable experience. There's nothing fun about it. The nurses were great. The staff it was then called Shawnee Mission Medical Center. Now it's Advent Shawnee Mission or something like that. They were bought out either which way, neither here nor there. They were all great. They were wonderful. And I will thank nurses any chance I get for how great they were to me and the work that they do, which I know is oftentimes a very thankless job. But nurses, you guys are awesome. And so after a week of recovery, I am sent home. And again, this was open heart. Okay. So now I've got a valve in my heart, a mechanical valve. You don't bounce back quickly from this kind of procedure. Okay. Being in the ICU is terrible. That's where kind of the worst of the worst and the most desperate people end up in the hospital. So I heard and saw things that I don't ever want to hear and see again, just, from being on that floor for as long as I was. So I go home to start the recovery process. About 2 weeks into the recovery process, I start having complications. So at the time I was living in a 2-story duplex. Well, I guess, I don't know if you consider it 2, 3, either which way. There was a full finished basement, and that's where I spent most of my recovery time. It was the coolest part of the house. And again, this was summer. Up the stairs from the basement was the main floor. And then up on the second floor was my bedroom. So whenever I wanted to actually try and sleep in a bed, which after open heart surgery isn't the most comfortable thing, but there were times I would try. About 2 weeks after my surgery, I go up the stairs and I make it up to the main floor and I start heading upstairs and I get so dizzy that I almost fell down that second set of stairs. And I thought, oh man, something's wrong. Something is really wrong here. And so I call my cardiologist. They get me an appointment immediately. I go back in. He's listening to me. He's listening to my heart. Okay, take a deep breath, take another, listening. He's like, okay. He very calmly tells me this. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go downstairs, go down the elevator, take a left, and go to the emergency room. They'll be waiting for you. I'm like, oh no, what is going on here? What's happening? And I said, well, should I be worried? And his response says, walk quickly. I like this guy. He's a funny guy. But either which way, there's a problem. So I went back to the hospital. I go into the emergency room. Sure enough, they had a wheelchair waiting for me. The doctor's office had already been on the horn with them. Thankfully, they're in connecting buildings. They're right next to each other. And so they wheel me back and they're getting me all taken care of and hooked up to machines and monitors and this, that, and the other. They had found that there was some fluid in my chest around where, all the surgery had just happened. And, of course, I'm still stitched up, and actually it wasn't stitches, it was stapled. So I've got all that going for me. And they're like, okay, we're going to keep you here overnight and kind of see what you're doing. And then we'll come up with a plan the next day. Okay. So I stay that night. The next day they come in and they're like, okay, we're going to have a plan here. We're going to take you down and we're going to do what's called a keyhole procedure. Okay. So what they were figuring was there was fluid building up there's a little sac around your heart, and I had fluid building up. So they were just going to open my chest wound. Sorry, I'm not trying to be gross. And they were just going to prick a little hole in it, let it drain out. And then normally the body just kind of takes care of itself after that. And I'm thinking, well, that sounds terrible, but okay, whatever you guys want to do. So we get that scheduled for the next day. Well, that night, and again, we're around August 11th, I do believe. That night, the fluid in that little sac around my heart became so much, it started pressing in on my heart. And again, this was the heart that was just operated on. And without going into the gory details, for open heart surgery, they stop your heart so that they can operate on it. So my heart had been stopped. Now they keep everything going, blood, oxygen, everything through other means while you're in surgery, but my heart had stopped while they did the operating. So my heart's not like real happy with life right now. Okay. It has this new mechanical valve in it. It had been stopped for surgery. You don't want to put other procedures on top of that already. Like that's just not good. But anyway, so I return to our previous story. So for the next day, we're going to do the keyhole procedure. But that night, the fluid around my heart started building up and it started putting pressure on my heart. And I went into AFib. So in AFib, I was in a hospital bed. And again, it's nighttime, lying perfectly still. And my heart is racing like a racehorse, like you had just run a full marathon, but you sprinted the whole thing. It was beating so fast. And I was lying perfectly still. I wasn't moving at all, but this got my attention. This got the nurse's attention. The poor night nurse, whoever she was and wherever you are in life, I hope you are doing well. She was not prepared for this situation because at that point I was not in the ICU. I was in, I think, the PCU. So, still these people should be kind of kept a close eye on, but it's not life or death. This lady didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know what was going on. She was trying to get doctors to wake up in the middle of the night. I guess she was having trouble with that. She got told to give me a medication. Don't know what the medication was. I never asked. I had a very bad reaction to it. Instead of making the situation better, it made it worse. So my heart started racing more. I tell you this next part not to be dramatic. I tell you this is because it's one of the most vivid memories I have of that night. But there was a time, and again, I had nurses in my room at this point. They had paddles in hand. Like everyone was expecting me to try and go Deddy by. But I'm leaning my head back because of how bad I felt. And I was kind of looking off to my left and I said, all right, big man. Yeah, if this is it, let's go. Because I'm flat not having fun here. Like it really felt like it was going to be the end. And again, not trying to be morbid, but like instead of the bright light and seeing all my relatives, I just kind of felt this darkness closing in. Now, to this nurse's credit, even though she was having a really rough time, when I told her she had to stop that medication, whatever it was, and I told her rather emphatically, not explicitly, emphatically, that she had to stop. Thankfully, she listened. If she had kept pumping me full of that stuff, I really don't think I'd be here telling you the story about it right now, because I just could feel, like I said, I saw the darkness and felt the darkness closing in. So she stopped. I never really stabilized, but at this point we're getting, kind of the early morning, whether it be, I think it was somewhere in the 5 o'clock a.m. hour. Doctors are arriving. They wheel me down to do the keyhole procedure because I'm in AFib, and it's because of this fluid around my heart. And so the pressures have got me in AFib. So they're trying to, they're trying to move along. All right. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the urgency of the situation until this next part. We get back to the operating room where they're going to do this. My cardiologist hadn't had his coffee yet, or not my cardiologist, but the guy who's going to perform this procedure. Dude couldn't have been caffeinated. He got rushed into work. Might have had a bad morning. Maybe the kids got bad grades. Maybe his wife was a little miffed at him. Whatever. I don't know. He didn't like the rhythm of my heart when I got back for this procedure. If you know anything about heart, to get it back into rhythm, you have to shock it. Shock. Electric shocks. So he was going to give my heart a good old jump, get it back into rhythm, because in AFib, it's out of rhythm. Keep in mind, my heart is filled with fluid right now, or surrounded by fluid. So I'm laying on the table and I'm talking to the anesthesiologist. I remember I was talking to the anesthesiologist. She had just put the mask on my face and we were talking about my high school. Yes, we were. I remember we were talking about my high school. Problem was, I wasn't asleep yet. I was talking about my high school. Cardiologist doctor says, oh, he must be out. Hit it. They ran 120 joules through my still very awake body. I was told you could hear the scream 3 hallways down. And I remember it because I was awake. If you have ever been hit, whether you can grab one yourself or, if this has ever happened to you, if you've ever been hit with something perfectly flat, let me say someone had a rock in their hand and you hit your arm with the flat part, just kind of that blunt force that blunt impact on your arm, no point, no jaggedness, just blunt impact. That's what it felt like over every square inch of my body on a pain level that I can't verbally register. I don't know how to describe that pain of 120 joules through your still awake body. I don't know. I lack the oral capabilities to relay that message to you. But that's what they ran through me while I was awake. Was not pleased about that. So the last memory I have was still with the mask on and seeing the oh so panicked look on the face of the person giving me the gas. They crank the gas and out I go while saying, don't do that again. Don't do that again. Don't do that again. Out. So I go to sleep. They're going to just open up my incision, poke the little keyhole, poke the little sack of fluid around my heart. They're going to drain out the fluid and it's going to be fine. It's going to be great. Right. Remember, this is in the 5 o'clock hour. This is first thing in the morning. When I wake up, I am still intubated, meaning I have a very long tube down my throat, and I don't do well with that on a good day. And this was not a good day. And my hands are tied up. I'm not actually upset about this. This part I understand because I have tried to remove things out of my throat before during the medical profession or the medical sessions that I was in. I don't like it. I'm really not good with things down my throat. So they had my hands tied up or Velcroed up or whatever they do. And I was still intubated and I was awake. I was waking up from the procedure. As I was waking up from the procedure, I couldn't open my eyes. I hadn't reached that level of awake yet. I could hear a nurse talking to my mother. And I'm trying desperately to stay calm because if I start getting worked up, I'm going to choke more than I already was on this tube down my throat. Well, the nurse finally realizes that I'm kind of coming to, and she's talking to my mother and kind of talking to me. I end up talking to her with my hand. My right hand, I think, was the one she could look at. And if she asked me a question, the answer was yes, I'd move my hand up and down. If she asked me a question, the yes was no. The yes was no. The answer was no. I'd move my hand side to side. We had a very good way of communicating in that moment. Until, of course, she asked me, well, are you ready for the tube to come out? Yes. And so up and down my hand went a lot. Like, yes, come on. You guys can picture it right now. Just make a fist and move it kind of up and down and be like, yes. So it looks like it's nodding. That was me in that moment. So as awful as it was, they take the tube out of my mouth. And so I'm finally breathing. Still can't open my eyes. I could tell something was very wrong. The way I felt, the tone in the room. And as I'm opening my eyes, I notice it's dark. It's nighttime. Yeah, I went down at 5 o'clock in the morning. The sun was coming up. I could see it peeking through the windows, in the 5 o'clock hour. It does that in the summertime. I'm coming to. It's dark outside. Something was not right. It was later I found that I had gone through my second open heart surgery. So what happened was when they went in to do the keyhole procedure and drain the little sack of fluid around my heart from the fluids, whatever that fluid is called, what they really did was found out that there had been blood clots forming all around my heart. All around that entire area, blood clots after blood clots. That's what we call bad. That's real bad. That's very much the opposite of what we want to happen because, as you know, blood clots can lead to strokes. They could have damaged the heart or the valve or anything that had just been operated on. Blood clots were about the worst thing that they could have opened up and found. And so they had to completely reopen me up. They had to take out all the stitching after stitching my rib cage together, or wiring is the more correct term. They wired my rib cage together. They had to undo all that. They had to take out all the staples. They had to open it all back up. They had to stop my heart again so that I had to do all the bypasses where they are keeping me breathing and blood moving through machines. And they had to basically do everything all over again. Instead of this time putting on a valve, they're scraping blood clots off of a heart. So that's where we're at. That was my second open heart procedure. And again, this is August 11th or 12th of 2016. So thankfully, after yet another week in the hospital, and I did not bounce back nearly as quick the second time as I had the first, finally got to go home. If you ever see pictures of me from the summertime of 2016, you will not see a smiley, nicely tanned person. You will see what looked like damn near a ghost. I was pale, huge dark circles under my eyes. I looked basically like a corpse laying there, just to be real honest, because of everything my body had gone through and just the recovery time. And again, I didn't even see summer. I spent most of July and August either in a basement or in a hospital room. So there was not a whole lot of chance to get sun. I tell you all that just to relay my experience. If we go back to before I started the actual story, remember, I got a mechanical valve because I wasn't done yet. I did not want to end my running career, which at that point I had done, I think I was at 4 full marathons. I had done, let me go through it here. The Route 66 Marathon in Tulsa in 2011, New Orleans Marathon in 2012, the Kansas City Marathon in 2014, and the Marine Corps Marathon in 2015. Yeah. So I had 4 full marathons, many halves, many 5Ks, many 10Ks, all under my belt before that. But I wasn't done yet just because of how much running has meant to me in my life. I couldn't really see it being done. Again, I'm circling away from my heart story just to touch on something else we might have talked about in the very first episode of this podcast, why I started running. I started running post-divorce. I needed an outlet for my anger and for my energy. And so I took up running to get healthy and for an outlet post-divorce. And even though my divorce was in 2010, as I laid there in 2016, so 6 years later, I wasn't done. I hadn't finished yet. You know what I'm talking about, where you start something and there's no logical end to it. There's not, I'm going to end it after I accomplish this. I'm going to end it when I'm ready. I'm going to end it when I finally feel like it's time, where, okay, race morning just doesn't excite me anymore, or getting in a good run doesn't do anything for me, or maybe I'm just too injured to continue. And even though I had gone through 2 open heart surgeries, I wasn't too injured that I couldn't continue. I wanted to keep going. Okay. The mind was willing. Could the body keep up? And that's why I got a mechanical valve with this heart surgery. I wanted to give my body every opportunity to continue down this road. I wasn't done yet. And so after very long recovery, again, I spent all of August with nurses coming to the house and people, stopping by, which of course is great. But these nurses would come and their job is to get you to walk. Now, look, they deal with a lot of people who had the same surgery as me, but who are much older, 60s, 70s, 80s. Okay. I'm not going to assume for all of them, but I think it is safe to say that most of them are done with their marathoning days at that point. So these occupational therapists who are coming over, they're just trying to make me move. They just want me to walk. Well, I can walk. Oh, I'll get up. I'll walk right now. I'll walk right here in front of you, lady. I am happy to do that if it gets me back to what I love doing sooner. And so, yes, I would get up. I'd walk. Well, can we walk to the top of the street? Yes, let's walk to the top of the street. And I just continually pushed myself to not only do what they've told me to do, but to do more. And rightly or wrongly, I can't say. I'm going to assume that it was okay because I'm talking to you right now. But, they wanted me to do this, so I would do a little bit more to the point. And I will admit I was wrong on this one. So we're still in my recovery, where I think we're in late August, maybe even early September. And the lady they had sent, she and I did not jive. I was not a fan. I thought she was very snarky and not very compassionate. And so, she had challenged me, I guess, in between visits to walk 1 mile. Okay. 1 mile. Fine. I'll walk a mile. I'll walk a mile in the heat. I'll take a picture of my GPS watch after I'm done with that mile. I'll see your mile and I'll raise you a little more. Well, seeing her mile and raising her more turned into a 5K. I went and did a 5K, not a real race, but just around my house at the time. And so when she called back and said, well, what did you do? I said, I did 3 miles. So, you what? Yeah, I went out and I did 3 miles. It's like, well, I guess you don't need me anymore. The response in my head was, you're darn right I don't. So that ended her and I's little sessions because I had already recovered more than she needed me to for her to be done with the case. But yeah, so I shouldn't have done that 3 miles and actually felt very crappy after it. But that showed me that it was possible. It was possible to start doing this stuff again. So I just kept pushing a little more and a little more. And when the doctor finally cleared me and I waited until my cardiologist cleared me, I started to run. I started to run a little more and a little more. Then I signed up in late September to actually do an official 5K. I wasn't going to run it. I was going to be happy walking the whole thing, but at least I would have been doing something. I was back doing something I loved. I was at a start line. I was out there on race morning. I knew some people who were going to be there. So I signed up and I took my kids, even took my kids with me just so that I wasn't kind of, out there by my lonesome. And my kids were there and I went and I did a 5K. I even ran a little bit of it. And I remember I believe it was September 17th, 2016. It was the Warhorse for Veterans 5K. And I did that race because even though that whole summer I had gone through the crap of that open heart surgery, I wasn't done yet. And so I did that race. I might have done one more in 2016. And then in 2017, it's the only time I missed like Rock the Parkway or Running with the Cows or some of those favorite half marathons of mine. In 2017, I only did 5Ks. 5Ks were the only races I did all the way up until November. And now I'm going into a different story entirely, but this will be my last one. And then in November of 2017, I did my first 10K. And I remember that 10K. And that 10K actually kind of relates well to this story I'm telling you. Because really, ultimately on this story, I want to give you the message of you're not done until you decide you're done. You're not done because someone has told you you're done. I mean, unless it's a medical profession and we're professional and we're talking about your livelihood here, but just you and you know what you can do. And it's amazing what we are capable of doing. And we can do great things. Even if you have setbacks, we can still all do some really great things. But I went to that 10K in November of 2017. It was a Thanksgiving Day-ish themed race. And I'm not going to knock the race company to put this on. It's one of the local ones, but I'm not going to tell you which one. Because while I was upset in the moment, I understand the decision, but I was upset in the moment. Anyway, I know I'm all over the place right now. I go and I do this 10K. It is cold, it is windy, and it is raining hard the entire morning. It was sopping wet outside. It was chilly. It was nasty. It was every bit gross November weather. Now, see, I love fall, so it wasn't breaking my heart too much, but it was cold. I ran in 2 layers of shirts, long pants, my running gloves on, a hat on. So that kind of tells you what the temperature was. And not many people did it. I mean, the 5K had some folks. The 10K was practically empty. So I did the 10K. Needless to say, I came in first in my age division. But when I got to the finish line was still set up, but not a person was there. Whoever was left was still were hiding in their cars. There was no one at the finish line. There was no one to clap. There was no one to say good job. There was no one to announce crossing the finish line from Overland Park, Kyle Walker. There was a table with a couple bottles of water and a couple medals on it. And that was it. I took a picture of that table. Took a picture of that table, posted it. Like my triumphant return to 10K, to running in general. And I met with nothing. Nobody there. But you know what? We're capable of doing really awesome things. And I didn't need it in that moment because with almost misty eyes, I crossed that finish line, having done a 10K after 2 open heart surgeries. And I felt great. Yeah, sure. In the moment, I was pissed off that no one was there. It's like, man, that kind of stinks. There was no one to even hand me the bottle of water. It was set on this deserted table with nobody around. But you know what? I finished a 10K after 2 open heart surgeries. Let's line up all the people who can say they have finished 2 10Ks, or I'm sorry, who had finished a 10K after 2 open heart surgeries. Okay. I will measure myself against all the people at that morning's race who had already had previously 2 open heart surgeries and who finished that race. And I still, to this day, wear that chip on my shoulder. Okay, yeah, I went to the Chicago Marathon in 2018. My time sucked. It was terrible. Line me up against all the other people who ran that marathon after 2 open heart surgeries. Okay, because I'm not done. I wasn't ready to quit this sport. I wanted to continue on. So whatever your setbacks are, whether it be you got to come back from a knee injury, or you've got your foot hurt, or something's wrong with your ankle, or maybe your time sucked and your ego is bruised a little bit, super great. You can come back from whatever it is that might have put some doubt in your mind that you can be a runner, because we can all be runners. We all are runners. If you're listening to this show, you are a runner. If you have 1 5K under your belt, or you've got 200, if you have 1 marathon under your belt, or you have 10, if you have gotten out there, if you've shown up to the start line, laced up the sneakers, and when they said go, you went, then you're a runner, and you can come back from whatever may be facing you right now. Okay, we're in fall marathon trainings mode. Everyone is hard into it. There are days where the run is going to suck. There are days where you have no energy for it. There's going to be days you have no patience for it. There's going to be days that your foot hurts. There's going to be days that your knee flares up. There's going to be days that you got a headache. There's going to be days that it's hot, and it doesn't matter, because we can push through damn near anything, because we are the most resilient bunch of doofuses out there. If you want to challenge someone, if you want to challenge somebody's heart and desire, going after runners is not the place you want to go. That is not the group you want to attack, because we are some hard-headed, hard-nosed, hard-working people. And that's what we do. So whatever is facing you right now, burnout or injury, anything in between, you can get through it, and you can go and dominate whatever your big fall race is, or you can dominate the next 5K you're going to, or you can go out there and kick the heat's ass. Whatever you need to do, you can do it. All right. And I'm not going to do, if I can do it, you can do it. No, but if I can go through 2 open heart surgeries, you can beat that your foot hurts. You can beat that it's hot outside. You can beat this, because we all kick that ass. We all do. So there's my motivational pep talk for today. We're going to go with that. All right. Maybe just a little motivation. And seriously, I asked people if I should tell this story. I did not want to make this a me thing. I'm not boasting about anything. This was the hand I was dealt, and so I played that hand. Okay, so you're going to get you're going to get a bad hand, from time to time. Now I can't talk. You're going to get a bad hand from time to time. You still got to play the hand that you're dealt. That's what we do, and that's what we push through, and that's how we are awesome as runners. And because we are awesome as runners, that's where we're going to go. So, deal. We good? I've now told the story. You know a little bit more about my background and where I'm coming from with this podcast. But man, it really stunk the time that I had to walk away from running, just because of that surgery and the time that I missed and the races that I missed. But I'm thankful and blessed to be back into it, and to have this platform to try and talk to all of you. And if my experience helps anyone, if it helps motivate you at all to keep pushing through whatever your situation is, then super great. It's done everything I wanted to do. But I'm good now. No problems. We're all kicking. So let's get out there, and let's just keep pushing through this hot summer and get into the next start line, which means we'll be at the next finish line. And that's what we want to do. So for this podcast, us personally, our next race is going to be on August. Is it August 6th? Oh my goodness. I think it's August 6th, because now I'm losing track of time, apparently. But I want to tell you for sure. Yes, we're going to be at the Spencer C. Duncan Make It Count 5K. That's in Gardner, Kansas. I would love to see some Back of the Pack shirts out there, or if nothing else, just come by and say hello, show some love. Find me. I'll be in my usual running attire. But yeah, that's a big event. And so I would love to see some folks out there for that. And then on the next day, it's going to be more of a training run for me, but we will be at the Groundhog Run 5K and 10K. They run at different times. The 5K is early in the morning. The 10K doesn't start until 10 a.m. I'm doing the 10K. So, if you're doing the Groundhog Run 10K, I'll see you out there. If you're not, I won't. But those are our next 2 places you can find the Back of the Pack podcast. August 6th at Spencer C. Duncan, Make It Count 5K, and then August 7th at the Groundhog Run 10K. So that's where we're at. And don't forget, coming up on Saturday, August 20th, is the Rexy Run down in Lawrence, Kansas. I want everybody there. If you can at all, make it down to Lawrence, Kansas on Saturday, August 20th. Get down there for Rexy Run, and they are going to be on the show shortly to talk about their race. But another, just such a worthy cause that really needs our support. And while we've talked about runnings in the decline right now in the area, at least it seems like a lot of races are, I want to try and get everyone back on board. Let's get re-excited for running. Let's get back out to the start lines, and then let's help great causes like Rexy Run and like Braden's Hope and like some of the people we've talked to. Okay. So that's going to do it. We will see you guys hopefully next weekend at the races. We'll be back next week with a show. I'm going to see if I can get Rexy Run on so we can talk to them as we get geared up for their race. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Back of the Pack podcast. I am your host, Kyle Walker. My pleasure as always. This show is brought to you by OKKC Sports and produced by Katie O'Neill. So everyone take care, and we'll see you next week.